Good evening and good to have you with us on this edition of the Urban Debate. Viewers, right from the beginning, Maharashtra has been on top of the table in terms of number of COVID cases, and Mumbai has been on top of the table as far as cities are concerned. Yet, something very different is going on in the last few days, which is why it becomes extremely important tonight to talk about the city of Mumbai. It is by far the biggest challenge that we have in India's war against coronavirus, and one has to ask the question if the government and the authorities are doing a good enough job to fight this battle. For example, in just the last 4 days in the city of Mumbai, we've had over 2100 cases. In 4 days, we've had over 2100 cases. This is far more than half the states in our country, individually speaking. And this is coming from one city in 4 days. We're nearing the 10,000 mark as far as Mumbai is concerned. 387 people so far have been killed in this city, and over 2,000 people have recovered. But let me highlight to you why we are talking about this right now. Firstly, there was sign number one that came from the government and the municipal body when they said that they're going to withdraw on the relaxation for non-essential shops. So for 2 days they were kept open, and then the civic body said, no, we cannot afford this. We cannot afford the infection to spread. No overcrowding can be allowed at this point of time, and the non-essential shops were shut down. Then today they asked the private clinic doctors to step up and start helping with the government hospitals. An indication that there is a lot more need for healthcare professionals, which is why additional people are being roped in. There have been far too many flip-flops in terms of policies and messaging that's come from the authorities in Mumbai, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. But the pain points are for everybody to see, viewers. The COVID hospital beds are filling up fast, and over the next 40 minutes I will give you that breakup as well. The shortage of healthcare professionals is a big concern. There is no clarity on government orders. There is no transparency in COVID data. Some of the data that the civic body was giving us in the initial days, they have stopped now. They don't even give us all the information anymore. And yes, hundreds who are stranded outside of the city are supposed to come back in the coming days, which is going to be an added problem. Is the government failing Mumbai in its COVID war? That's the big question I'm asking this evening. Let's say good evening to Charan Singh Sapra, spokesperson for the Congress Party, Tuhin Sinha, spokesperson for the BJP, Dr. Shashank Joshi, Dean Indian College of Physicians at Lilavati Hospital, and Dr. Om Srivastava, Director for Infectious Diseases, Jaslok Hospital and Research Center. Dr. Srivastava, let's begin with some insights on the state of healthcare infrastructure. Let's talk about the number of healthcare professionals available, the number of beds and ICU beds and ventilators that we have in Mumbai. Are we running short somewhere?
I think that, when you say are we, and when you're asking a question as to whether we are running short, you cannot keep preparing for something like this as and when the situation changes virtually on an hourly basis, not even on a daily basis or weekly basis. And there's very little that you can do insofar as having to add a certain number of not just beds, but also healthcare professionals. So you will try and keep meeting the requirements as and when the situation arises, but there may be from time to time a lack of the total amount of resources available. That is one. Is the government doing the right thing in recruiting more and more doctors? Well, the answer is yes, because it is a public emergency act that is already being deployed in the state. So yes, it is well within its right to ask doctors to be, to be adding to the healthcare workforce in looking after such patients. However, there is a caveat to that, and that is when you say that you are asking somebody to look after a person who has been diagnosed with COVID, that requires a different kind of a training. That's the reason why training programs all over the world have disease outbreaks or public health emergencies, or a program that will look at training a healthcare professional in that kind of a story. So before you say that, look, we've recruited 100,000 doctors, you'll need to show that these doctors are capable of being able to deliver at the forefront The last thing you want is that a doctor being in a state where they are not able to make a decision simply because they are not tuned to thinking in that way. So yes, it is a great effort to have more healthcare professionals being recruited for this, but you'll need to train them as well. You'll need to keep that figure robust and being able to deliver the services that is required for a patient who needs to be hospitalized with COVID. Tanvi?
No, absolutely. No, I will not disagree with you on that, and I'm not questioning the merits of calling in doctors, to help with the government hospitals. I'm just trying to understand if that is a sign that a lot more people are needed, and outside of this, if more will be needed, and how we go about training them, which is what you spoke about. Let me just take our viewers through some information that came out, today. And this is the situation in Mumbai right now. Amongst the big hospitals that are treating COVID patients, Nanavati Hospitals has 30 beds, they're all occupied. Seven Hills, Part 1 has 12 beds, they're all occupied. Seven Hills, the MCGM one has 40 beds. Of those, 30 are available. HBD Medical Colleges, 10 beds, they're all occupied. BPT Hospital, 2 beds available, just 2 beds. Baba Hospital, whatever beds were there are all occupied. Saifi Hospital, 26 beds, all occupied. Kasturba Hospital, 10 beds, all occupied. Nair Hospital, 50 beds, of which 16 are there. And KEM Hospital, 30 beds, all occupied. There are, of course, huge quarantine centers that have been put up. But as far as treatment of people is concerned, this is the status right now. So, should we be concerned, Dr. Shashank Joshi, that in terms of space available for treatment of COVID patients, Mumbai has a big challenge staring at us?
Absolutely, because we have a huge shortage of ICU beds. And what is happening is a lot of patients are taking a long time to get discharged. So Bombay Municipal Corporation yesterday has revised their guidelines. And what was happening initially is you needed 2 COVID negative tests to go and get downgraded. So now they have revised the policy as a special situation that after 5 days, if you are asymptomatic, you can be downgraded to a COVID care facility. That will free up a lot of critical care and ICU beds so that patients who deserve the beds will get in. The second problem which is happening is patients are running from pillar to post because of this COVID, non-COVID confusion. Even a non-COVID hospital ideally should have a triage and in emergency cases should give immediate treatment with full PPE like a COVID or a suspect COVID and then move the patient where the bed is there. They also have a helpline called 1916 which can be called and patient can be waitlisted. A lot of asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic patients can be managed at home and therefore there is an urgent need to free up the beds. And definitely that, in fact, you said KM Hospital has 30 beds, but as far as my knowledge goes, there are almost 120 beds now which are full of COVID. So we are definitely stretching our public and private infrastructure to its fullest. And it is important that we recognize that we treat emergencies and save lives at a top priority. And I think now they are definitely trying to take steps in that direction so that the hospital beds can be opened up to the more deserving patients and the asymptomatic patients will be able to be stepped down to corona care facilities. Their care will not come down, but they are asymptomatic, so they can be looked after at a care facility.
Okay, but if I just had to look at the numbers, 2,133 cases in 4 days, 50% jump in cases in the last week. Does this surprise you? Does this look odd to you, or are we on track to hopefully peaking somewhere mid-May?
No, this is a huge concern because we were actually coming down. If you noticed it on 1st of May, we were actually coming down. And then we have again started climbing up. Remember one thing, ma'am, we are nearing the peak of the epidemic. Our peak of Mumbai is expected between 15th May to 30th May. And we have to prepare for that peak. So clearly we are all concerned about the absolute numbers as well as the deaths. But two good things are there, that as the numbers rise, our overall death rate of Maharashtra state has come down to around 4%, which was at 8% in the last 10 days. So there are some signals which are in the right direction, but last 2-3 days, the absolute numbers going up is a clear cause of concern.
Okay, so then Mr. Sapra, what do we do? This is a clear cause of concern. Mumbai has been under the scanner since day one. Yet we are staring at a situation 1.5 months into this battle where the numbers are suddenly on the rise and we don't have enough healthcare infrastructure.
See, Tanvi, this is definitely, a real thing of concern where the numbers are increasing since last 2-3 days. But let me tell you that the government or the municipal corporation or the authorities are also working round the clock. As you know that the doctors have been given a notice that the private doctors have to report to the duty now for these COVID patients at least 15 or 20 days in a month. So the government is trying all sort of things because this is a unprecedented health crisis. We are making arrangements for additional beds. We have been asking from the central government about N95 masks, about ventilators, about PPE kits. We had demanded 8 lakh N95 masks, but we have got only 1 lakh. Then as far as PPE kits are concerned, we had demanded around 1.5 lakhs, whereas we got only 30,000. We had demanded around 10,000 ventilators, where we haven't got many ventilators. So now we have also started purchase at the state government level. Earlier, it was centralized system. That's why we have been saying from day one that the system has to be decentralized. Unfortunately, it was centralized, whereby the rapid test kits also which had come had failed. They had to go back. Now there is also a dearth of test kits. We are now managing somehow. I feel in another 3-4 days, there'll be plenty of stock for the test kits also, and the test kits and the tests will also, go on increasing. As far as Dharavi is concerned, in Dharavi, there have been more than 2,000 or 2,500 tests. So we have been doing a lot of testing. In Mumbai, more than 2 lakh people have been tested. That's why so many cases are coming. And another thing, you cannot deny that Mumbai has chawls, Mumbai has slums, congested lanes. In one slum, there are 5 to 10 people staying. Social distancing cannot be maintained. There are common toilets. Now, this is the main issue of concern for the chawls and the slums, that there are common toilets. Now, these common toilets are also being sanitized repeatedly. Every hour they are being sanitized. But still these cases are increasing. We are creating an excessive quarantine facility. We are at present having 60,000 beds for quarantine, especially for these people from slums who cannot maintain social distancing in their residence. They can be brought to these quarantine centers so that the social distance can be maintained, hygiene can be maintained. And till May 30th, the government has targeted that 75,000 quarantine beds should be there in Mumbai. We have also constructed a hospital at MMRDA. Probably 1,000 or 1,200 beds will come over there with all the ventilators and all the ICU units also over there. So we have been trying to increase the capacity. Like the earlier doctor said, the existing number of beds which you mentioned, we have enhanced the capacity in those hospitals also. We have taken additional facility of other hospitals also. We have today requested Railways, Mumbai Port Trust and Defence to spare their capacity of their hospitals in Mumbai Port Trust or in the Defence Colony or the Navy Nagar. So the government has written to them also that we'll be needing more beds, we'll be needing more ventilators, we'll be needing more ICU facilities. The government is trying everything which is there today, and we are also planning so that more and more number of cases, if they are coming, we need to treat them, we need to cure them.
No, Mr. Sapra, that is fine. The government may be trying, but is the government doing enough? The government may be trying, but if the government doesn't manage to do enough and fails, then it's of no use. I don't even know the numbers anymore because the daily detailed word by word figures that were being given to us are not being given to us by the civic body anymore. The Chief Minister himself used to hold news briefings earlier very, very frequently. He doesn't even hold news briefings anymore. Quarantine centers is a different thing. Right now we're talking about COVID patients and us not having enough beds, enough ICU beds, enough ventilators. Now these are the things that we should have done in the first 6 weeks of the lockdown.
Tanvi,
And then we go on with our policy flip-flops. One day we say shops will open, another day, yes, well, let me finish my point. One day we say shops will open, another day we say shops will shut. Few weeks ago, the civic body said, okay, we will begin some amount of work in construction and economic activity. 2 days later, they went back on that. It's also creating so much of confusion and anxiety amongst people. Is that the way to go about it, Mr. Sapra?
Tanvi, let me answer your first question first. It was about the COVID facilities. Now, all these facilities we are doing, we are not stopping, we have not slowed down anywhere. But the fact is that the state also needs money for that. Today, the revenue is stopped since last 1.5 months. And we are having 15,000 crores, which is pending to come from the central government. The finance minister had demanded 25,000 crores for Maharashtra state. Now, when the central government knows that Maharashtra is badly affected and Mumbai is overall badly affected in the entire country, they should release some funds for all this. Why they are not releasing funds? We have demanded 25,000 and 15,000 of GST, like 40,000 crores. They have given us just 1,600 crores. How can we manage all these things? We need to purchase ventilators. We need money. Or let the central government give us the ventilators. Let the central government give us the test kits. The test kits which had come from the central government have failed. You have seen it has not only failed in Mumbai, it has failed in the entire country. So this is the situation where only the state government cannot be blamed if you want to play a blame game. I'm not trying to play a blame game. I'm saying that we have to collectively fight it out. This coronavirus is an unprecedented health crisis where all the parties have to come together, all the citizens have to come together, all the doctors have to come together, all the people who are having such facilities have to share the facilities, whether they are the private hospitals, whether they are the private hotels, even they will have to share, or whether they are the private banquet halls, they'll have to share. We have to save human life at any cost. And the Mahavikas Aghadi government is doing all the bit what they can do for this, for fighting this coronavirus.
Yes. Okay. Let me bring in also, fourth panelist who hasn't spoken so far, and ask Tuhin Sinha if he believes that we seem to be failing Mumbai at this point. Tuhin?
Well, Dhanvi, if you recall, I was on your show with Sanjay Jha on 10th April when for the first time I had raised this caveat that if the Maharashtra government does not get its act together, we are headed towards a catastrophic situation. On 18th April, I wrote a long article in a leading digital magazine, The Print, where I said that, army deployment may be required in certain pockets of Mumbai. All of these went in vain because Shiv Sena attacked me, saying that the CM has been doing a wonderful job. And today you see that catastrophic situation unfolding right in front of your eyes. Now, let me point out a few specific blunders which have led to the situation. If the spike which you see in the last 4 or 5 days, if you recall, suddenly around 15th April, they had changed the rules of testing, wherein asymptomatic high-risk contacts were not to be tested. Again, at that point of time, we had raised a huge alarm saying this is a very suicidal step. And I can tell you for a fact that I know of a couple of doctors, I know of relatives of patients who have not been tested in the last 15 or 16 days. That explains the spike today. Secondly, let me tell you how big a failure the lockdown in Mumbai has been. In a place called Mulund, you would recall Mulund had the lowest number of cases until about 4 or 5 days back. And then suddenly, 3 days ago, it records 53 cases. Now, this is not because of, foreign sources. This is because the lockdown in Mumbai has been an abject failure. So instead of blaming the central government, the Maharashtra government needs to wake up. On 24th March, when the entire lockdown had started, Karnataka, Kerala, along with Maharashtra, were in identical positions. Today, Karnataka has barely 700 cases. It is ready to start work. Kerala is not reporting a single case. In Mumbai, the entire contact tracing has been a farcical exercise. The entire containment zones have been conveniently altered. Everything has been a sham. And why it is, I'm telling you, the blame, at the core of it lies the very lackadaisical attitude of the CM. I am asking you a simple question. Does Maharashtra have a war zone? I have not seen a war zone. Does the CM ever step out of his house? Does he personally speak to and take an account from the bureaucrats? You can't leave it to the bureaucrats. Is Praveen Pardesi the CM of Mumbai? Is he the CM of Maharashtra? No, he's not. Then you can't just, tell him that do whatever you feel like, do whatever you feel is right. That is the core problem of Maharashtra, because of which we are continuously plummeting for the last 7 or 8 weeks, and today we are headed towards, or we are, staring at a catastrophic situation.
Well, Mr. Sapra, do you want to respond to what BJP is raising right now? And Tuhin is right. We did have this conversation a few weeks ago, and it looks like we are still headed the same way. Nothing has changed except policy flip-flops.
No. See, number one, he spoke about Mulund. Let me make things clear. I live in Mulund, and Mulund, these cases, the spike in cases was seen because there was extensive testing. The RT-PCR testing, I requested the BMC to do the RT-PCR testing in the 2 containment zones over there. They expedited that, and that's how yesterday or day before yesterday, we got those 55 cases. It was not 50 cases. So don't worry, we are doing testing. That's why these cases are coming out, Mr. Tunin Sena. And secondly, where he said that Chief Minister is not coming out, let me remind him, today the Chief Minister took the cabinet meeting from Sayadri. And number 3, the Prime Minister also, he doesn't go to different states. He's not visiting. Everything is working from video conferencing. So you don't need a CM to go to every chawl or CM to visit every slum to tackle this coronavirus. So you better be aware of this. There is a system. There is a system in place. Mumbai is highly congested city. You know the demography of Mumbai. You know the slums of Mumbai. You know the chawls of Mumbai. And still, the government is fighting it out. If BJP doesn't wish to cooperate, if you wish to only criticize the ruling party, it's left to your end. You are the opposition party. You have all the authority to criticize us. But we are enhancing all the requirements which are there to fight this corona crisis. We are enhancing the beds. We are enhancing the quarantine facility. We are enhancing the medical facility. We are enhancing the medical healthcare infrastructure. And the government is doing that very rapidly. Only tell the Prime Minister of this country to give money to Maharashtra. He is not ready to spare a single penny for Maharashtra. He is giving us peanuts, 1,600 crores in front of 40,000 crores. And
I don't think that's an excuse right now, Mr. Sapra. It's not as if...
No, without...
Mr. Sapra, it's not as if the state has run out of funds within 30 days. I don't think that it can be given as an excuse for the failures of today. If 2 months later you don't have money to initiate some projects, I understand.
If you say that state is only spending on healthcare, it's not that. There are so many other things going on. Food grains, PDS system, everything is going on. It's not only healthcare system. So state government is spending whatever state government has, they are spending. But they need more funds. If you don't give us ventilators, we have to purchase the ventilators. If you don't give us an N95 mask, we have to purchase it. If you don't give us other healthcare facilities, we have to purchase it. So we need money also. The Narendra Modi government doesn't want to share money, and then they only want to put allegation on us.
Okay, I'm going to step away from the political fight for a bit and go back to our experts, and in fact go back to Dr. Om Srivastava. Dr. Srivastava, do you believe that at some point there was confusion about our testing policy, that we weren't testing asymptomatic patients when we should have, and which is why maybe we are looking at this situation right now?
I think that, when you have a situation that is so fluid as in this one, even the WHO has had to revise its policy. Okay, what looked like a very sound policy just about 6 weeks, 8 weeks ago, 2 months ago, is now different. Okay, and that's to do with the dynamics of what is changing, the way it's changing, the speed at which it is changing, and the total numbers that we are dealing with. So there may have been some changes in the policy, but ultimately you are going to make a policy by what is the most accurate way to fulfill the requirements of that day. So there may have been some things that could have been done differently, yes, for sure. But that is true for any policy maker anywhere in the world, especially with COVID. And let me tell you the other thing, Tanvi, is that all policy that will getting made is going to get changed from time to time, some in some small measures, some in big measures. So I don't think we should probably look at it retrospectively and say that a policy was a mistake. What we probably need to do is to
Okay.
ensure that what policy is being made is the most robust one for the day. And if there is something that needs to be changed, it gets changed rapidly to meet the biggest requirement of that time, of that day.
So let's talk about that. There have to be lessons learned from how we've dealt with it so far and where we need to go. Just like you said, we need to design a policy of dealing with this situation. What should that entail now? What should be our priority?
What we probably need to look at is, we keep talking about a term which is herd immunity. I think herd immunity needs to be based on very specific kind of criteria. That is to say that for every set of number of people that you're testing, you need to show that there is antibodies or neutralizing antibodies in at least 2/3 of that population. And that's the reason why you will test people who are asymptomatic, who are in the community, only to find out if there is herd immunity, then the total number of patients who will be diagnosed or will be requiring medical attention or hospitalization should be falling. That's the reason why you would do it. So yes, I think there is a reason to test those people who are asymptomatic, only to find out whether or not herd immunity is happening in the community. But that is to my mind, that is still at least a week, 10 days, maybe even a couple of weeks away from where we are today as of this date. But we will need to have a policy that plans for the next month, 2 months, 3 months. We cannot have a policy that will be revised today for something that we should have done 4 weeks ago.
Okay, Dr. Joshi, do you want to add to this? What do we need to do right now at the situation that we are staring at? We've got now, the Mumbai crossing the 10,000 mark and going beyond that, over 700 cases recorded just in the last 24 hours. As we speak, we're getting this data. And so obviously the rise is continuing at the same pace. Total cases now 10,714, 25 deaths reported just in the last 24 hours. What needs to be done, Dr. Joshi?
So I think, this virus and its news and its policy change every hour. And I think we need to be very aggressive. We need to be forward thinking, and we have to go and start from the most important denominator, which is deaths. So first thing is we have to save lives. And to save lives, we have to go on a war footing. And on a war footing, we have to save lives. We have to give people who deserve the beds in the hospital and ensure that people who are asymptomatic are moved to corona care facilities. That is the first thing. Number two, testing policies have been revised, and I think they are in place now, but we need to be more proactive. And thirdly, the whole medical profession is fully ready for the battle. As we near the peak, remember, every city had its peak, whether it was New York, whether it was Wuhan, whether it was Beijing or Shanghai, whether it was Hong Kong, they all had their peaks. They have gone past their peaks. Mumbai is heading for a peak. Let's be realistic and face it. Learn to live with corona and COVID, but mindfully and not recklessly. And it's important that we need also a lot of people's cooperation. Please ensure and enforce the lockdown very strictly. I still see people not masked. I still see people trying to break the lockdown. We need very, very tight policing. And also in the containment zones and the slums, I think I compliment the BMC. They have actually gone in. They have done pulse oximetry of the comorbid conditions and elderly citizens, and they have tried to pull them out in the corona care facilities. So within their limitations, they are doing their best. Let's all come together to support them. And we need full cooperation, both of the politicians and the people, to fight this war. Because in the next 2 to 4 weeks are going to be crucial for our city to save lives and save humans. And I think we can do it. We have the will, both people and political. But I think some discipline is needed. And that discipline is lacking also from the people. I must say that, I'm sorry to say that, we have had a curfew now implemented from 8 to 7. And we probably need tighter policing during the daytime also, particularly in the containment clusters. And we need to declutter them. It is impossible to do distancing them. So we will have to declutter them. We will have to do something very actively and proactively there. Beyond just healthcare.
Yes, and we have to keep politics aside, and keep the fight between the state and the center aside and resolve this to win. But that doesn't seem to be happening. Every time you ask the state government something, They claim that they're not being given revenues. They claim that the migrants are not being sent home. We are having to feed them. And the blame goes to the center. The center then turns around and says, no, it's the state's responsibility. How are we going to face such a big challenge if politics continues like this?
Well, Tanvi, personally, I'm very disappointed with the way the state government tries to deflect the blame upon the opposition. You would recall that till about a week back, we were being blamed for creating instability. Did we create instability? The moment you criticize, the moment you show the mirror to this government, it is so hypersensitive, it starts putting the onus on the center. Come on, I mean, look at all the other states. Does Orissa need to blame the center? Does Kerala need to blame the center? Does Telangana need to blame the center? They're all, opposition parties. We are all for supporting this government, but then this government needs to show some amount of reassurance. The people need to gain some confidence. Unfortunately, even on this day, I can tell you, I have confirmed reports from sources who I have been in touch with. There are people who are struggling to get an admission in the hospitals even after 24 hours. I understand a BKC, a temporary hospital is being set up in BKC, but again, that's going to take at least another 10 days. That should have been ready by now. Anybody who was following the situation knew by mid-April that the situation was fast deteriorating. The state government did not have a plan. But instead of really acting upon it, it kept blaming the center. I would appeal to the state government to even now realize what kind of war situation it is and, just do the needful.
I'm actually going to give some more instances like this, Tuhin. A 55-year-old civic official faced a scary situation. I'm quoting from Times of India right now. When he could not find an ICU bed or one bed with just oxygen support for 5 hours yesterday, despite being breathless and showing an abnormal pulse rate. His daughter spent harrowing hours at Hiranandani Hospital, Powai, and then later at Seven Hills. And while the former told the family that there was no ICU bed, the second hospital arranged one after a long wait of several hours. This is just one instance. Here is another one. A 31-year-old Powai resident whose wife, infant and mother tested positive on May 2nd said that they called the police helpline, and he had to literally threaten that he is going to do something dire for some response to come. His mother had been kept waiting in Rajawadi for 8 hours. For 8 hours she was waiting. Stories that have emerged of horror stories from Kasturba and some of the other hospitals where food is not available, where water is not available, where help is not available. And I'm not going to blame the healthcare workers. I am not saying that the doctors or the nurses who are at fault. They are overworked, overburdened. But we need to come up with this solution. Everybody knows the size of the population of Mumbai. Everybody knows the reality of slums and crowded living that we have in this city. Everybody knows that we are going to see high numbers. From day one, the experts have been saying that, Mr. Sapra. Then why is it that we are still looking at this situation?
See, I have a very simple point to know from you, and probably you could do your research and let me know by tomorrow. How many guardian ministers have actually visited their, guardian constituencies? The problem over here is, see, there are broadly two components to the whole issue. One is the law and order, the imposition of the lockdown, and the other part is the medical preparedness. Even if one were performing well, I can tell you the situation would not have been as bad as you see today. The problem is both the components have failed simultaneously. Law and order is not in the control of the state government because it is completely outsourced to the NCP. And I don't know whether the CM really pulls up the Home Minister for his unending failures. And number two, the health preparedness is completely outsourced to the BMC. I understand BMC is a very competent body, but at least you need to take stock of the situation, which unfortunately I don't see the CM being hands-on with the whole situation.
Mr. Sapra, would you want to respond to this?
Yeah, of course. See, as far as law and order situation is concerned, I would like to inform you and Mr. Tuhin Sinha that 95,000 cases have been registered on people who have been flouting these restriction norms. And out of that, around 31,000 cases are here in Mumbai only. So let me tell you, the police is doing its job. Don't demoralize the police, whether it's Mumbai police or the Maharashtra police. Number two, as both the doctors have said, that you will see a situation every day there'll be a different decision. Every day there might be a change in policy, like MHA did on 2nd May. They issued a circular that all the migrants workers should be transported via buses only. Then on the 3rd May, they gave a permission for trains also. So if MHA and Narendra Modi government is doing this flip-flop, which you call this as a flip-flop, I'm not saying flip-flop. I'm saying this is a sudden policy change. Likewise, the state government is also doing policy changes every day. Number one, the municipal commissioner and the state government has given orders to all the private hospitals in Mumbai and in Maharashtra that they have to open their private hospitals and the doctors should come on their duties. They have also fixed the rates for these private hospitals for COVID patients, like 2,000 rupees per bed for the general ward, 3,000 rupees for the different ward, 4,000 rupees for the ICU bed with ventilator. They have capped the charges also, so that the poor people who wish to go in the private hospital should not face exorbitant charges. So the government, the BMC, is doing everything what they have at their disposal. From tomorrow onwards, all the private hospitals, I don't know how many are there, but more than 2,000 hospitals, they'll be coming into the ring and they will be serving the COVID patients. The doctors will be coming. The minister, the health minister has said that they will be filling all the balanced vacancies, whether that is of the paramedical staff or the doctors, whatever is possible there now. So we are getting in touch with all the private hospitals. We are roping them in. We are filling all the vacancies. We are doing all the possible things which we can do to update the medical infrastructure. Still, if BJP wishes to criticize, it is their duty. They have no other work. It is the opposition party. They can put a blame game, but we will do everything to fight coronavirus. We will do everything to save life of each and every Mumbaikar and each and every citizen of Maharashtra.
Okay, let me go back to Dr. Srivastava. Dr. Srivastava, right now, if I look at the situation in all of the current hospitals, they're almost done with their capacity, max utilize their capacity of beds. Obviously, there is a need for more. Now, Mr. Sapra is saying that from tomorrow, the private hospitals will open up as well and start taking the patients in. Is there a definitive plan in place there? And do these hospitals have the right kind of equipment, the PPEs and the gear that is needed to carry out this entire treatment?
So again, that's a dynamic situation. Most hospitals who have got a certain number of beds allocated will be able to calculate what is the total daily consumption of a PPE or a mask or all the consumables, and every hospital must prepare accordingly. Depending upon the number of beds that they have, they need to have that kind of equipment with them for the foreseeable future, whether it's for 5 days or 10 days or a month's time. They need to be preparing accordingly. There's no excuse for saying, look, we've run out of our PPE equipment, and then say, look, can we order some now? Because it will take 5 days for the equipment to come. That is one. The second thing is, I can't see why asymptomatic patients, people who don't need a hospital bed is for a person who is probably going to require something to ensure that the complication this person has or is going to be happening is looked after. So that's why you need a hospital bed. For all patients who don't have that urgency in their clinical situation, should be moved into a place where they can be evaluated or kept comfortably and moved back into a hospital if there is a clinical change in their scenario. These would be some of the things that will decongest a hospital, where the hospital bed then can be used for the sickest of patients. That's where you need your intensive care unit, you need your ventilators, you need your intensivists, and you need such patients to be looked after in a far more aggressive fashion, just so that they don't go on to those situations which may become life-threatening. But that is for every 100 patients who are infected with COVID, that percentage is only about between 5 and 10, no more than 15. So the vast majority, the 85% people who are then infected, need to be moved into a situation where they are comfortable without any further complaints, and that the kind of supervision you need to look after such patients is much, much lesser than what would be required in a hospital in an ICU. So that is one. The second thing is, of course, the lockdown that has come into force in the government itself, where you must ensure that there is enough social distancing at any time in the day. I think that there are some things that could have been done differently. Without going into that, that's not my brief to talk about, but some things could have been done differently and some policies have been changed accordingly. So I think that you need to look at which is that part of healthcare that will look after the sickest people, because they are the ones who need every bed at a priority. But that's not a huge number. Those patients who don't require that kind of care inside a hospital, inside an ICU, should be moved into those facilities where they can be ensured, where they can be looked after in a comfortable environment, and then they can be sent home after a period of whenever their test is negative or 14 days, whichever comes first. So some very basic changes in the implementation of a well-written policy. But look, like any other policy, howsoever well it is written, if it is not implemented, it is of no use to anybody.
Okay, Dr. Shashank Joshi, do you want to comment on this and things we could have done differently or we should do differently now, looking at the situation and the rising number of cases?
Absolutely. I think that one thing which the Bombay Municipal Corporation and the private and the public healthcare infrastructure has learned is a lot of pre-symptomatic, asymptomatic, mildly symptomatic patients who are in the hospitals with COVID positivity. They now, even the MH has given a direction, they need not be in the hospitals at all. They can be in corona care facilities. As Om said, we need to look after the sickest, but more important is who will get the sickest, the vulnerable group. And I think they have recognized this vulnerable group, people above 55, people who are hypertensive, diabetic, chronic kidney disease, chronic liver disease, people who have a comorbidity. They are the ones who are most vulnerable, and we need to, on a priority, save their lives. Not everybody needs a ventilator. You see, the COVID has two types of lungs. One lung which is saved only by prone position and by giving good oxygenation. So we have now understood, as we have grown into this pandemic, a little more on the granularity to save lives. And our full focus should be to save lives, identify the critical, and give the treatment to the sickest in our hospitals so that the people who are a little better can be taken care of in the corona care centers, because then we can optimize the utilization of our ICUs and our hospital infrastructure. And we need to do that on war footing. And I think both the public and private hospitals need to cooperate to their fullest. Sorry.
Yes, no, I just wanted to, on that point, go back to Dr. Srivastava and ask him this change in policy that's happened in terms of who needs to be hospitalized and who can just be quarantined at home, and doesn't need to be using a hospital bed. Will that, how soon do we see that impacting situation on ground? Because right now, Dr. Srivastava, the wait is at least 3 to 4 days for people to even get into a facility.
Well, you should be able to see the difference within a matter of maybe half a day, maybe first thing tomorrow morning. If we are, like I said, a policy, howsoever well written it may be, if it can't be implemented, it is of no use to anybody. So once there is a clarity, and what the BMC has done is that it has made absolutely pristine policies, absolutely clear. There is absolutely no ambiguity in what the policy states. It's simply a matter of hospital administrators, whether they're public hospitals or private setups, corporate hospitals, simply to ensure that the one patient that you were talking about, the one at Hiranandani Hospital that you just mentioned, Tanvi, such a patient does not have to wait for any more than a 15-20 minute the time required to finish the paperwork, so that this kind of a patient can go directly to an ICU. Because when we know now in the audit that we have done so far, a patient who begins to get short of breath, that is the stage where you can make the biggest difference. There are a number of things that you can employ in the treatment of such a patient to prevent this patient from going on to an ICU or a ventilator, or unfortunately succumbing, depending upon how quickly you have caught that situation. So what you need to do is to arrest that situation at that stage. And so that is the person who is your VIP patient. The most important part of anybody in that hospital seeking care is that patient who has not as yet gone to a complication that is recognizable and preventable, so that you are able to make a difference in the outcome of such a patient. So I think that this population, which is, again, I keep saying, for every 100 people who are diagnosed with COVID, this population is no more than about 5 to 10%. And they are the ones for whom all the ICU beds, if there are 5 ICU beds in a hospital that are dedicated to COVID, then all 5 of such hospital beds should be made available only for such patients. And so that is something we should be able to see as early as tomorrow morning, hopefully.
Okay, hopefully yes. And we will keep a track on the of that development on ground, because the cases are not stopping. They're still continuing to rise. May 1st, 7,625 cases, 751 were the new ones. May 2nd, we reported 547 cases. May 3rd, we reported 441. May 4th, 510 new cases. May 5th, we had 635 cases, and now that's actually gone to above 700 cases in one day, which is why it's a big concern, viewers, because by the day we are seeing a significant rise in the number of cases. Now, yes, a lot of these may be asymptomatic patients, mild cases, and they can just be treated at home. But that just goes on to show that the virus is still very much here, and we cannot let our guard down. And when the government issues a policy and then goes back on it, it just adds to the confusion of people. Few weeks ago, the government said on April 22nd that these are the list of activities and business activities, economic activities, construction work that can start. And then 2 days later, they went back on it and they said, no, absolutely nothing doing in Mumbai and Pune. We cannot afford to do it. 2 days ago, again, they did the same thing. Non-essential shops had opened. In 2 days, they went back and said, no, we won't allow this to happen, too much of crowding. And the case that the civic body also built up went on to say that we're still seeing a high number of infected cases. When this flip-flop happens, it causes concern amongst people. When somebody goes to a hospital and has to wait for hours together to get some response, it causes concern. When people have to wait for 3 days to get a bed in a hospital facility for COVID treatment, it causes concern. And so it is even more imperative that the civic body and the state government are absolutely transparent about what's going on and the situation. And they speak to us and they update us on a regular basis. Only then will we be able to defeat the war against coronavirus. Remember, we have to go on war footing. Mumbai is on top of the chart, above 10,000 cases. Cannot, even for a minute, take the situation lightly. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation. Let's get you the latest that we are getting in from Kashmir in an encounter. One of the most wanted terrorists of Kashmir, the Hizbul chief, who actually succeeded and took over after Burhan Wani was killed 4 years ago, was gunned down in an encounter. He was called Riaz Naiku, and Farid, in fact, is joining me with the details. Farid, take us through, where did this encounter operation take place? How long did it happen? Take us through the details.
Well, as far as this operation is concerned, this started yesterday in the afternoon when security forces got this input about Riaz Naiku. Begpura is his native village, and he had come visiting his home. We've been told that his mother was not keeping well, and he had come to see her. That's what our sources in the security apparatus tell us. The security forces went in, they cordoned off the area, and as they went into the house, they searched a couple of houses, but they found nothing. So till late last evening and even through the night, initially they thought that it was a futile exercise. But then intel agencies kept their inputs coming in. They were pretty sure, damn sure, that he was there. So they continued with the search operation till finally, it was a very well-made hideout in that house, in the attic. That's what we have been told. Very cleverly made and with wonderful disguise, and that's why they couldn't get him. But finally, as the intel kept pushing, they decided to go up and do a comprehensive search, and it was at this time that they managed to find him. There was a brief exchange of fire where he was killed, but his associate kept fighting till this afternoon, and finally his resistance also came to an end. It is a massive, massive success. There is no doubt about it, though security forces people tell us that it is an important milestone, but this fight is long. The road ahead is very long because still there's a lot of militancy, and then you have a foreign element as well, non-locals who have come in, especially in North Kashmir. But as far as Naiku is concerned, someone who was active from the last 10 years, also obviously tells you, in spite of such a strong anti-insurgency grid, he managed to evade them because of two important things. Tanvi, one, he never used a mobile phone. Mobile phone is something that for 95% of inputs, security forces depend on mobile phone surveillance, and he did not use that. And number two, he chose his associates very, very cleverly. I mean, he was not someone who would really rely on anybody. He chose them carefully, and that's why human intelligence was also not generated against him. But finally, as is with all of them, his luck also ran out and he's been killed. He was the person who was handling Hizbul Mujahideen. He was also someone who was a master recruiter, getting in new people into the Hizbul fold, and had a number of attacks where he masterminded, was the main person, and that is why he was on the most wanted list.
Okay.
Backbone of Hizbul Mujahideen in many ways, and that's why, as I said, is being seen as one of the biggest successes against militancy, and especially against his in the last many years. Tanvi?
Okay, Farid, also give us a sense of what's happening. You know, in the last few days, we've seen many reports of such operations being carried out, encounters taking place. We saw an unfortunate one where 5, lives of security personnel were lost just 2 days ago. There has been a step up in the activity in that area.
Yes, for a change, we all know South Kashmir is something, it's a word basically which everyone, whenever he hears bad things come to his mind as far as militancy or violence is concerned. But these cases that you referred to have now happened in North Kashmir, which more or less has been incidentless. Yes, it has been an infiltration in many ways. Militants used to come in from the other side, and they would not really remain in North Kashmir. They would just use it as a route. But in this case, they are living there. They are making it a resident militancy area and are attacking security forces. And if you would have noticed, as rightly said, the number of casualties that the security forces have suffered is because these people are very heavily armed, trained, motivated, and they are not locals. Local militant is not that very well trained. He does not have the motivation in the sense, does not have that kind of a training and weaponry as well. So that operation is not that difficult. But against a non-local militant, it's a big challenge, and that's why all those casualties. And if you would have also noticed in the last operation, or the last attack, all the CRPF personnel had headshots. So that also tells you that they fired with precision. So that is the new challenge. It has shifted from south to north. And now they'll have to really take care of North Kashmir from infiltration to hinterland and ensure that these militants are really stopped in their tracks. Back to you.
All right, Mir Farid, thank you so much for joining us and bringing us that comprehensive update from the valley and what's going on in Kashmir right now. Quick update also coming in from West Bengal, where the government has now allowed home delivery of alcohol. State Beverages Corp has launched a portal for placing the orders, and again, as several other state governments have done, in order to avoid overcrowding and long queues at the wine shop, the governments are now facilitating online delivery, because obviously this is a better way even for them than to shut down the entire alcohol business, since it's a huge source of revenues even for the state governments, which is much needed right now. So here is West Bengal also now exploring the online delivery route, home delivery route for liquor.